Hi everyone, welcome to Intro to Flutter. I'm basically going to cover like the installation and setup process for Flutter, and I'll show you like a small demo of like a hello world, so you just know like the basic idea of it after we install. But mainly like the setup is what's going to take most of the time today.
And let me just add, after this next week, we will be building a simple app, and Ricky will be hosting that workshop. So this is just an intro just to get to know Flutter and get started.
So to give you some background, if you don't know what Flutter is, I'm going to start with like a case-based scenario. So let's say you have an app that sometimes some apps only work for iOS. They may not be compatible with Android. And let's say after you study some code and everything, you learn some Java, and you're able to both the App Store and Google Play. But sometimes when you have like an update, like a software update, you fix bugs and you make changes to the app, like the layout, some of the features or anything, you would have to individually push it onto the iOS and the Android update, like into the App Store or Google Play. So it's kind of like using two code bases, which would be a lot of work. And there's also a thing where both like an Android and an iPhone may have a different screen size. Even in Apple, you may have an iPhone, an iPad, a Mac, whatever it is. And if you're trying to deploy the app onto there, the screen sizes are different, which also may cause problems. So what would be like a solution to this? And that's where Flutter comes in. Basically, it allows developers to create interfaces. You can regard it as a UI toolkit to help design the interfaces for like any type of screen size. And it's really easy to use it because they have like pre-designed widgets. So if you have an iPhone and if you got like the latest like iOS 14 update, you probably know that a lot of people were using widgets to sort of reformat like how their iPhone screen looks. So it's kind of like that, except in this, Flutter has the widgets through Android Studio, and that makes it easy to lay out the app. So like some of the widgets would be rows and columns, stacks, centering, whatever like the text you may have, padding and margins. So usually it would ask the user for like a blank space, and then it would develop with the widgets from the blank space. And that would all be done by Flutter. So for example, like a floating stepper, progress indicator. So one of the like sample apps that I'll be kind of going over from even tutorials that I've seen is a very popular introduction is a counter app. So it's just kind of like you have a screen and you keep pressing like a button that increases the number, and then you can see the number of times the number increases when you press the button. So like I said before, you know how like for iOS and then for Android, you have to have two code bases, but for Flutter, you use the one code base known as Dart, and then you code in Dart, and then you're able to deploy it to both the App Store and Google Play. There's another feature called Hot Reload. We'll kind of like get into this later, where as soon as the code is updated, it's kind of like a refresh button where like the user interface will change immediately. Sometimes when you're coding like in other languages, and then you'd have to run it, and then it takes some time for you to see the difference. But it doesn't work like that with this. When you're using Dart inside Android Studio, it refreshes right away. So you can see the changes in your app immediately. And Flutter also gives you the opportunity to have access to the original source code. So let's say you're developing an app and you want to, or like you get a sample code. You're able to sort of click around the app from like the device that you're looking at it from through Flutter, and then see like how they develop the code for like a particular section of the app. So this is something that I kind of want to go over again for like background. So like I said, Flutter is based off of widgets, and then the widgets build up on each other. So like when you start off with the blank screen, and then let's say they wanted to add an app bar. The app bar is kind of like a pre-built widget. So you have a scaffold, and a scaffold is kind of like a base. It's part of something called a material app, which basically gives like functionality for the app, such as the app bar, the floating action button, etc. So you have the scaffold, which is like the main, like the background, and then you can add an app bar, which is like the bar at the top of the screen, and you can put like a title for it. And then the body is like a container, so you add like another screen to it. And in the container, you can have a column and then separate the column into a row and then into a text. And then the row, you add a text to it and an icon. This is basically called a widget tree. If you're in data structures or you've taken data structures, this is kind of like a binary tree. It's very familiar to it, so you'll be able to understand it a lot more. But basically, it builds up on each other, which is what a tree does usually. So this is something I want you to keep in mind when I will introduce this again when we go to the hello world part. So this was the same image I showed before, except I'm showing you like how it looks on the app. So you have the scaffold in the back, and then the app bar is up here on the red, and then you have the container, which is the little rectangle they added. And then inside of the container is the column, which is the yellow box. And then they separated it where they have a text, which is this and this. And then they have a row, which is green. And then within the row, they have a text and then an icon. So that's just how like that tree building is how they developed it. So some prerequisites to help with the installation would be you can either use Android Studio or VS Code. I'm going to be showing you how to use Android Studio because that's one of like the main softwares that a lot of people use for Flutter. But I don't think VS Code is as different. So there's something called an emulator, which is basically like an emulator and simulator is the same thing. An emulator is kind of like you have an Android on your like screen. So I'll show you how to we're going to download that. So you'll have an emulator on the screen, and then when you like develop your app or make a little update or something, then you can see it on the screen like of your device. Basically you're gonna need, oh sorry, did not mean to do that. Like I said, Emulator is pretend version of an Android that'll run on your computer. And if you want to, I think you can use Windows to test like, you can use Windows to test like Mac and iOS, but you need a Mac if you wanted to test iOS apps. So for Android apps, you can use a Mac or PC. You need the Android Studio, and then you need an Android emulator or a physical device. Today, I'm not really going to go over the physical device. I'm going to focus more on the emulator and the simulator. But I don't think using a physical device is also like it's not that complicated. And then for an iOS app, you need a Mac. It's necessary, and then Android Studio, and then an iOS simulator. So before we get started, I'm interested to know, let me see if anyone knew. Okay, there's 2 people. So of the 2 people that are here for the workshop, are you guys Windows users or Mac users? You can type it in the chat box.
Both.
Did you say Windows?
I'm both. I have Mac and Windows.
Okay, so well, the thing is that I think for Mac you have to download like one extra thing, but Windows there's only like one part that differs. So I'm gonna walk you through the process of setting it up. So you obviously have both. So obviously you can choose which one you want to like set it up with. So I guess before we start the setup, is there any questions regarding like, I guess like what Flutter is? Okay. So for Windows, the first step is we're going to install a Flutter software development kit. And I'm going to put this link in the chat. I want you to go to the link, and then you're going to select Windows, obviously. And then if you don't have Git installed, I want you to also select Git for Windows and then download that first. So let me go ahead and put this in the chat. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why it looks that big, but then you can just click the little box at the bottom and then it should be fine. And then if you have a Mac, you should be able to use the same link and then just click Mac OS when we get to that step. So if you're using Windows and you're kind of confused, like, hey, like where's Git or something, let me go ahead and show you. So like, after you click Windows, you're going to get Git for Windows. You should see it right there. You're going to click on that. Like that's what it would look like. And then it should automatically start downloading. And yeah, so I'm going to wait for you to download that if you're using Windows. If you already have started downloading it, and then after you download it, just click next for all the default requirements. And then after that, you can download the Flutter SDK. So if you want me to show you, if I also click on the link, you see that it says Windows, click on Windows, you get the Git for Windows. And then after you do that, we're going to get the Flutter SDK. You just click on this and then it should start downloading. If you have a really fast internet and computer and you already at that spot, after you download the zip file for Flutter, you can go ahead and open it. Open the zip file, I mean, and then you select extract all at the top. So it should look like once you click on it and then you see the extract all at the top. I want you to go ahead and click that. Oh. So I want you to know where the place you extract to is important. So have that in a location that you know you're going to be able to access it easily. If you don't feel like installing now, that's also fine. You'll have access to this presentation later. So if you want time later, you can also do that. Something I want to point out, though, definitely is because this is definitely a problem that I ran into, and I have a Mac. I'm pretty sure it's the same policy for Windows too. To set up this entire thing, and to get to the end part where you're working on Android Studio, it's gonna take up a lot of storage, and so make sure you have a lot of storage. They recommended you have at least 10 GB, but I think you should have more. Because especially if you're a Mac user, there's a part that we have to download called Xcode, and that's about 6 GB. So if you're not able to download it now, you're like, hey, I don't have that much storage on me right now, then you can definitely refer to the PowerPoint later. And after you have some storage, and then download it then. So if you extracted all, after you open the zipped file, so Flutter recommends that you put the file path in the C drive, for example, /src//Flutter. they said that they don't want you to put in something called the program files, but because it would require special privileges. After you do that, select the show extracted files when you complete it and then extract it to that location. And then it should open up in src/flutter. So if you have extracted all, and then here you can see that they said that like they want it to be extracted to the folder C, because that's their C drive, and then a :/src/flutter, and then they extracted it. So like this is like the path that they took, src, and then they put it in their local disk folder. Sorry, drive, not folder. And that they have an src folder, and then within that they have the Flutter folder. So that would be like the path that they would take to get there. Okay. So if you've done all that, you're going to select the folder Flutter, and then Flutter will now be on your system, and then you can start running it, running the Flutter commands by locating the Flutter underscore, the Flutter underscore console.bat file. And then if you click on Flutter underscore console.bat, there may be a pop-up for protection, but you should just click more info and then run it anyways. So that part basically should be like after you open the Flutter file, and then you should see something like this, Flutter underscore console.bat. And then when you open it up, it should take you to like the little command. And we're gonna like test, like we're gonna run a command just to test it. So if you want, I will give you about a minute-ish to get there. Or if you're just observing for right now and you want me to keep going, you could say so.
I'm just observing. I'm not at my computer right now.
Oh, okay. All right, then I'm gonna, I think, because there's not much of you here, so I'm gonna, if you're just observing, I'm just gonna keep going. All right, so if you are looking at the command prompt, you're going to type flutter -- version, and it's just going to tell you the version of Flutter that you're running in. It may look a little bit different than what it says here. Here it says 1.2.1 version after you run it. It may be different because obviously like it could be updated. So you can try that, and then if you want to use Flutter from like somewhere else that's not like the Flutter underscore console.bat command, we're going to do something where we set the path variable, and then because we need to tell it where the Flutter package would be located. And instead of having to do this every single time when you're trying to use Flutter, we're going to just do it once, and then you can just get to Android Studio like right off the bat. So to set the path variable, you're going to go to the start on your computer. So for Windows, like your little search area. I don't have a Windows, so I can't help you much, but I'm sure you guys know where it is. Then you're going to type env, and then you should get something called edit environment variables for your account. And they want you to select that. To be sure, if you are following me right now and you are downloading and you have a Windows, just make sure you have a lot of storage, because this is going to require a lot. So if you've seen an env and then you found the edit environment variables for your account, you're going to go ahead and select that. After you select it, so under user variables, you should see something called an entry called path, and then you're going to select it and click edit. So something like this should pop up, and then you see path right there under user variables. So we're going to go ahead and select that. After you do that, we're going to put the cursor all the way at the end of the variable value and add a semicolon, and then we're going to type the path to locate that bin folder from like the original Flutter SRC folder. So like the path would be the C drive, SRC, Flutter bin, because that's where, from the tutorial, that's where their file was located. But obviously it depends on where you put your file. Like I said, this may depend on where the bin is located in the Flutter zip that you set up. So for them, they selected path, and then like after you select it, and then you get something like this to edit the variable. In the variable name, they put path, and then all the way at the end. So technically, you should have stopped. It should have stopped at /npm. Let me open it so you can see it better. It should have stopped at /npm, but you're gonna add that semicolon right there, and then your path, and then you will click OK. So whatever your path is to like the bin folder, and with the bin folder, I mean here when you see the bin folder in the Flutter file and the Flutter folder, that's where they want you to create your path to. This is just to create like create a path to the command prompt if you're like wanting to use the Windows command prompt instead of the Flutter one. So after you do that, you're gonna add the path variable. If you do not have a user variable for path, you can create a new one and put path, but in all caps for the variable name, and then variable value will be the location of the bin folder. So what they're saying is basically here, if you come here, or like if you don't have like path here, you can select new, and then you put path, but all caps here, and then here you just put like the little like SRC Flutter bin is what your whatever your path name is what you would put, and then select OK. After you do that, now you can run Flutter from anywhere, so not just like the Flutter console. And another useful command that they recommend, you're going to do this on Windows or you're going to do it on Mac, whichever, would be the Flutter Doctor. That basically tells you like what else you kind of have to do, what's going on, setting up to see if there's anything that needs to be fixed before you can, start using it. So you can go ahead and search up command prompt in the search, and you'll get the command prompt. After you do that, it will open up like this. So you just have to, like how you typed Flutter -- version, same way, but you're going to type Flutter Doctor. It'll take like a few seconds. After you do that, something like this should pop up where like you have like the one check because it sees that you have Flutter on Windows, but then you don't have like the Android toolchain for like the device, like the SDK or Studio or any of the devices that are connected, because we haven't like set up the emulator or anything. So that's why there should be like some exclamations or something there, and there's some errors, but that's okay because obviously we have to set it up still. Okay, so that was basically installing the Flutter SDK for Windows, and I'm gonna how to do Android Studio and Android Emulator. You're gonna be downloading Android Studio and Android Emulator the same way how you do for Windows is the same way how you do for Mac. So the only difference is like the Flutter SDK that's different for both, and then you download something extra for Mac. So I'm just gonna read along this for the Android Studio, but I'm gonna go over it again when I get to Mac, and then I'll show you pictures of how it's supposed to look. The only like difference is kind of like some of the keywords, like in Windows it's settings, but in Mac it's preferences. So Obviously, if you already have Android Studio, you can go ahead and check to see if you have the latest version. And in the Flutter installation instructions, you want to click Install Android Studio and download it. So by that, I mean in the little link that I put in the chat, there is an option here to install Android Studio. If you just scroll down a little bit more, click on download and install Android Studio. And then after you go through the setup wizard, go through all like the yes, I agree, blah, blah, blah. Just install the Android SDK, the platform tools and build tools are needed by Flutter to build the app. So that may take a few minutes if you are installing. But by my understanding, I think that most of you that are here are just sort of observing, kind of seeing what I'm doing. So since if that's the case, I'm just going to go ahead and keep going. So obviously you can look at it later, or if you're just waiting for me to get to Mac, that's fine too. So after you go through all that setup wizard stuff, it should take you a few minutes, and then you'll come to the welcome screen of Android Studio. Once you get to the welcome screen, I will definitely be showing you like pictures of this, like once you get to the welcome screen, this is how it's supposed to look. So don't worry, I'm just going through this right now because I'm going to go over it again for Mac. Then you'll configure it, and then you're going to go to configure to settings and then click on the plugin tab, and then you want to install the plugins for Flutter and Dart. And then there's an option where you click on browse repositories at the bottom, and then you search for Flutter and then install it. After you install it, it'll ask you if you want to install Dart plugin too, and you're going to click yes. And then you want to restart Android Studio to activate any of the plugins. So you know that Android Studio, you installed it. If you come after you do all these steps and then you come back to the main screen and then it says start a new Flutter project, because when you initially install Android Studio, that option won't be there. But then after you do install the plugins and then restart it, it should be there. Okay. And then the emulator, like I mentioned before, or if you join late, the emulator is basically like your Android device, but it's going to be like on your laptop screen. So it's kind of like when you're coding, you're going to like see the difference, or you can see like the updates to your app on the screen. You can use a physical device, but I'm focusing today on the emulator for Android and the simulator for iOS. So to download the Android emulator, or to set it up, sorry, we're gonna click on the start the new Flutter project on the Android welcome screen, like we just discussed. And you would choose the Flutter application, click next. And then you're going to give your project a name, testing_app is an example. Depends up to you what you want to do. If you want to add more words like testing_app_ the word 1, then you can do that, but just add underscores in between the words and this should be all lowercase. You want to make sure that the Flutter SDK path matches the one you have in your system, because it's going to ask you for like the location. So you want it to have the same path like we were discussing before when we were setting up the SDK. And the project location is where you're going to be saving your app. After you do that, you would select next. And you can leave the company domain. Usually it should come with one called like example.com. You could leave that. And then just select it to select finish to build the first app. And then now, after you get to this part, then you'll see like a little screen and it'll be like main.dart, open up an Android Studio. So it looks like a coding platform. Nothing that we haven't seen before. And then in that, there should be some sample code that the Flutter team already wrote. And on the counter app, if you were here in the beginning, I kind of discussed that. So you can sort of play around with it, see how they coded it, and then use your emulator to like see like the differences it has. You can also change up with it if you get to that part. So to run on Android, you need the emulator. So you would go to the AVD manager, which is an Android icon. It would look like that. This is just an example of what your screen could look like. See like the main.dart. This is like the sample code that was given. And the little Android screen, icon at the top is the AVD manager, the Android virtual device. So to run on Android, like I said, you need the emulator. You click on the icon. So it should take you to set up a new virtual device. So you'd want to click create a virtual device. And then from the tutorials that I learned from, they recommended that you pick Nexus 6 or 6P because it just helps with performance aid. And for the operating system, you haven't installed one already, you could just they give you options. One that I saw that was recommended was Pi, P-I-E, and you could choose that, or you could choose one that you want to do. It shouldn't really matter. After you've given your Android virtual device a name, and if you want to choose like a device frame, you can do that. But an important part once you get here is to click emulated performance and then change it from automatic to hardware accelerated. Then you're going to click finish to set up your virtual device. And then you'll be able to see the device on your screen after you click the play button to launch it. So you can close those windows by clicking on the Android icon from the .file page. And then, like I said, you can test the sample code given by the Flutter team, like the little page I showed before. So there should be an option for you to select like the device that you want to use, like the emulator. So for the emulator, it would say something like Android SDK built for x86. And then you select the play button next to main.dart to run the code. You can see the progress of your app in the console at the bottom. And then if you see something called initializing Gradle, it just takes a few minutes to basically like launch anything automatically onto the phone. And you should see the app on the device. And then if you do it with a sample code, then it's the counter app. So Mac users, if you're going to be following with me, again, emphasizing that a lot of storage for this. So make sure you're prepared. If you're like, oh, I don't have storage right now, you can definitely look at this later and follow. You can be following the same exact steps that I'm explaining right now. So for Mac, I did give more like pictures for every single step because I have a Mac, so I kind of followed it. But the only difference between this and Windows was installing the SDK. But I included some pictures for SDK, so you should be able to follow that too. So, like I said, you should have at least 10 GB, but I definitely recommend that you have more because that was an issue that I ran into. So for Mac, we're going to need something called Xcode to deploy the apps onto the iOS simulator and the iOS device. So when we get to that step, I'll talk about that more. You're going to go to the same link that I sent for Windows. So it's already in the chat. And if not, you should definitely be able to like just sort of Google Flutter, like installing Windows or installing Mac, and then it should take you there. But if you were to look at it, it would be like install, and then this time you'd click Mac OS or depending on whatever software you're using, and then follow those steps. So if you're at Mac OS, you're here. And then we're going to go ahead and download the Flutter SDK by clicking the blue button. And then this, like I said before, this has all the Flutter code and helps us to enable the Flutter apps, etc. After you download, same as Windows, after you download this, you will click on the zip file and then open it up. So for Mac, sometimes you can also like, you download it, it should like pop up like here at the bottom, like a little like bar, or you could also click on downloads and see it and like double click on there to unzip the compressed file. So after you select it, there are many things that are there. So it's important to move the Flutter folder out of the download. So don't keep it there when you're like running through everything. Definitely want to like, give it a location, somewhere more permanent, because if you're going to keep referencing it. So by that, I kind of went through it. I went to the install, clicked on Mac OS, clicked on the blue button to download, and then it downloaded. And then in my downloads, it looked like that. After I downloaded it, double clicked on it. So you could already see that's like 1.19 GB. And that's like the first, just the SDK step. So make sure you have storage. after you click on that, it would look like this. And you have like a bunch of things in here, like the bin folder, the underscore console.bat, and multiple other code of conduct stuff. So that's like the first few steps for Mac to download the Flutter SDK. So like I said, an ideal place you should definitely want to move it to somewhere that's more permanent. So somewhere that they suggest that you move the Flutter folder to would be under your username or in a folder that like you think that you can have easy access to. So to sort of get to like the Flutter folder, like I was having a little bit like of trouble. So if you wanted to locate where your folder is, so what I did was my little hard drive or whatever is called Macintosh HD. And so to get here, you can hold down the command button on your Mac and then keep clicking the up arrow until you get here. After you click here, you click Macintosh and then click on the users, and then that's my name, so I click on that. And then I created a folder called developer and then put like all the stuff in there. So let me go back a little bit. So basically Macintosh HD is kind of like the C drive for Windows. So if you're like, I don't know where that is, or like I can't see the path, hold down the command button, keep clicking the up arrow until you see Macintosh HD. And then you go to users, go to your username, and then when you click on your username, now your home page will be under your username. So you would select file at the top, which would be like on your home screen, like your Mac home screen file at the top. And then you'd click on new folder and create developer. Or you can create, I said developer, you can say something else like my apps or Flutter apps or something. Then you would want to move the Flutter folder that you downloaded into developer. So the path would now be Macintosh HD to users, to your name, to developer, to Flutter. So after you develop that little path, the path to get to Flutter, we're going to tap into terminal. So you're going to want to select the spotlight or magnifying glass at the top right-hand corner. This is like the search button. So if you have a Mac, I think you know what I'm talking about. If you want to just search anything on your laptop, like, oh, where is this file or something, you're just going to go there and then search for terminal and then open that up. So then after you get to terminal, we're going to want to open up a file called the bash file. So when you're, one second. So basically this was to create the path, right? And in developer, I have my Flutter folder. Like I basically created a developer folder under my username, and then I dragged the downloaded, like the file that I unzipped, like I unzipped the file that was compressed, and then I dragged it into here. So instead of being in my downloads, it's in developer now, and then I have a path for it. So then I opened up terminal, and then we're going to find like the bash profile. So when you open up terminal, basically you wouldn't see like the vim.bash profile. You would just see like your username and then the $. So we're going to type vim.bash_profile. After you do that, something like this will pop up with like a bunch of like squigglies and the bash profile at the bottom. And so, like I said, you're going to type vim and then space .bash_profile. So don't forget the space in there. And make sure you don't do like too many spaces or something. And then we're going to add a line called export path, and then this little like path to Flutter Git directory. You can find this on here. It should be, it's right here. It's under update your path. You can find it on there, or if you get access to this PowerPoint presentation later, you can just copy paste it. So you can add that. And then, but obviously where it says path to Flutter Git directory, including the brackets, we're going to replace it with the actual path of where your Flutter folder is. So first, you're gonna want, the first step is to copy everything up to the colon. So that's gonna be like export to like this colon right here. And then you're gonna paste it into the terminal bash profile. So to show you what that would look like, it's basically this. So like I said, you can access it on the website, or you can just, when you get the access to the PowerPoint later, you can just do that. So you would, after you get the little squiggly thing at the top, you're going to type export path equals in the little thing up to the colon. After that, we are going to want to get the path to the Flutter folder. So Mac has like a little like other way of doing it. You're going to hold down the Flutter folder and drag it to the terminal. So it'll put the entire file path that navigates to the folder into the terminal, rather than you having to like type the path file or whatever. So I can kind of show you, I like attempted to do it. So this is what I had. And then you see how like that was my Flutter folder. And then this is, I already typed like little like path they said to type. And then I dragged it, and you're just gonna like drag it from there to there and let go. After you do that, it would look like this. So that's my path, right? Users, my username, developers, a folder I created, and I put Flutter in the developer folder. After you get there, we're going to add a /bin to the very end of the path to close it off, and then some quotation marks. So basically what I mean there is, you know how like I dragged the Flutter folder and it looked like that. And then I'm going to put a /bin, add some quotations. And then after that, you're going to type, I believe, yeah, to insert the text and start typing in the Vim in the command in terminal. We're going to hit the I key, which stands for insert, type /bin, and close it off with some double quotes. Oh, so you're going to like type the, you're going to hit I first to insert, type the little bin, make sure you type it at the top. I think you might try to type like at the bottom, but make sure you type it at the top next to your path. And then close it with some quotations. Inside the Flutter folder, you're going to have a folder called bin, which is what the Flutter needs to locate to be able to work anywhere from your computer. So if you were here when I was going over Windows, I was saying that like Flutter gives you a little command place that it's called like flutter_console.bat. So, but then if you want to like work from like the Windows prompt or something, or any other prompt, then this is basically us trying to set up a path to it. And you're doing the same exact thing here, but with terminal. And then after you do that, so we're here, you typed a little like /bin thing. And then we're gonna type escape. Hit the escape key, and then you're gonna type :WQ. So you're gonna save the file and then quit the file in the, that's like the language for Vim. And then after you do that, it would look like this. So basically I went from inserting, adding little /bin and closing it off with quotes. And then I typed escape :WQ exclamation to sort of like save it. After you do that and you press enter, you'll be back here to the regular, your username, the $. So once we're done doing all that, you can quit terminal. So when I say quit terminal, like at Mac users, I know like you had the little like, you know, the red X at the top. You should do that, but you should also like on your little like home screen, like at the bottom where all your apps are, like right click on it and then click quit. So it's like gone from there, and then reload it, like search for it again and then reload it. After you restart terminal again, then we're going to check the version and the Flutter doctor like we did before with Windows. So basically, I'm saying that I opened it up again, and then I typed Flutter space -- version, and then all this stuff came up. Welcome to Flutter, and then it told me my version is 1.22.3. It also told me the version of Dart that I'm using. Dart, if you missed me saying it, it's the code base that we're going to use for developing the apps. So I did all that, that's to check the version. And then if you wanted to do Flutter Docker, that basically tells you like what's going on in Flutter, making sure everything's working, or what else we have to do. So when I ran Flutter Docker, it told me that, oh, you have Flutter on your computer, but you still have to get the Android SDK. You need Xcode for developing iOS and macOS. Xcode, Android Studio is not here. There's no devices connected. So there were some issues, but of course, like before, makes sense because I haven't downloaded it yet. So that would give you the opportunity to sort of use Flutter from any command, which is what the whole SDK thing is about. So after that, we're going to go ahead and install Android Studio on the Mac. So to install Android Studio, we're going to go to Install Android Studio and select Download. And install Android Studio to open it up and a new tab. And then like I typically like to keep a tab and then like open stuff on a new tab. So you could just right click it. So if I wanted to download Android Studio, I think it's at the top. Maybe not. It's definitely on here. There it is. Android Studio. Download Android Studio. So I would just go to this and like right click it and then open it in a new tab. After you do that, you should select, there will be a little green button and it would be like download Android Studio. So that's what you would do. And then you're going to go through the whole setup wizard, install the SDK, the tools, same thing as Windows. This part is exactly the same. So if you're looking at this later and you're like, hey, I'm Windows, but I didn't really understand how to do Android Studio, I added some screenshots on like how it's supposed to look. But obviously you would kind of do it through Windows instead of like through Mac. So you would click on Android Studio, you come here, that's the little green button I'm talking about. And then like I said before, it requires storage. Here it says that for Mac it's 878 MB. So make sure you have it. And then after you download it, you're supposed to go through like a bunch of all that setup wizard, agree to the statements, whatever. And then you would show up to a screen like this. This is the welcome Android Studio screen that I was talking about earlier. So after you do that, so I said that, yeah, you're going to go through the setup wizards, say yes to everything. There were some questions that I got, but then a tutorial I saw didn't really get that. Was like, oh, do you want to import any settings? I thought that I didn't really want to import anything. And then I didn't really want to share any data to Google or whatever. So of course, that's up to you. But I don't think it should impact you. So once you get to the welcome screen, we're going to access the properties. So we want to select configure at the bottom and then select the preferences. So I don't think you can really see it here, but before I selected preferences, there's like a little button right there and it would say configure. So you're going to select that and select preferences. If you're on Windows, preferences is settings. So like it should look like this, but it would just say settings here after you click configure. So once you do that, say yes to all the settings, you get all the screens, set preferences, and then we're going to go to plugins on the right and search for Flutter and then install it. So once you select preferences, you'll like see something like this right here. And then we're going to go to plugins on the left. We'll say plugins. And then we want to install the plugins for Flutter and Dart. So we're going to search for Flutter, install it, and then accept any third-party plugins for installing the Dart plugin as well. So after you get here, you can go ahead and there should be an option for like, it may depend on the version you're using. So once I got here, I sort of like search Flutter and then it popped up. But if you have something called browse repositories, you can also click on that and then you search for Flutter. So here I search for Flutter, Flutter came, you install it. It may ask you for any like third-party plugins, click yes. It may ask you if you want to download the Dart plugin, click yes. And then you get the option about restarting Android Studio. If you're here for Windows, same exact process. So I accepted the plugins, and then if you want to restart the IDE or the Android Studio, you click yes. Then now there should be the option to create a new Flutter project. So like I said for Windows, it says create new Flutter project now. Initially, it did not say that. You can see here, it does not say create new Flutter project, but after you installed Flutter and all the plugins and then restarted it, it should show up saying create new Flutter project. And then the little configure is what I'm talking about. Like it looks like that. After you click that, you can see the preferences / settings. After you see the new Flutter project, you're going to create new Flutter project by selecting it. And then you're going to select Flutter application and then click next. This part is also the same for Windows. So after you click new Flutter project, you're going to click create application. Flutter application. And then it would open up like this. So when you reference back, I said that you want to change the project name for the name of the app, for example, testing_app. And then the Flutter SDK path should be the same name as the path that we talked about earlier, like when you set it up for the command prompt. We said that we wanted it to, it's like the location of where your apps are going to be. You want it to be saved there. So the path name should be the same. So when we get to that part. Okay, so I said testing_app, obviously you can pick your own name. And then the SDK path should be where your Flutter little folder thing is located. So it should automatically be there, but if not, you can click those 3 little dots and then go select it, the Flutter. Project location, this is like default. It usually stays in a place called Android Studio Projects. You could change it. I'm just gonna keep it as it is. And then don't have to do anything in the description, and then you're going to click next. After you do that, you're going to get to a screen called set the package name. And then, like I said, for Windows, example.com, company domain, that like comes up usually. I know they say that like, okay, so if you get the set the package name, you could change this. Company domain is kind of like, if you have a website or a company, they usually put that. You could also just put your name. It just sort of sees where like, when your app is like deployed to like the App Store or something, then it's just kind of like a unique way to identify that's your app. So let's say like my name is Madhu, and then if I put my last name, Madhu Jagadish, then it would be like, and then I put my company name as, or domain as madhujagadish.com, it would say com.madhujagadish.testingapp. So then unless there's someone out there that who has the same name as me and they also said testing app, you should be okay. You're not really going to mess with anything else because we're not really using Kotlin or Swift. And you're going to click finish. After you do that, this is the main Dart I was talking about for Windows as well. The little screen that will come up. And like I said, they already have some sample code. This is what Flutter already did for the Counter app. You can like play around with it and see like, oh, like the syntax and whatever. Or if you just want to use their base to like develop your own, up to you. So that's what it would look like to set up Android Studio. After this, we're going to install the Android emulator for Mac. So basically, we're going to see how to run the Flutter demo as an Android app. We're going to go to Android Virtual Device Manager. That's the AVD. And that's the Android icon at the top right corner. And then we're going to go to Tools. You can either select that. Another thing that worked for me, if you have a Mac, you can go to Tools at the top, like where you have the, like where next to File or something. And you can select AVD Manager. Either way should work. So for instance, I showed you how to do it with tools. You can see like I was on Android Studio, I clicked on Tools, AVD Manager, and then this little thing would pop up. Or you can click on the little icon right there, Android icon, it should come. After you do that, we're going to create a new virtual device. And then that's where the Nexus 6 and 6P come in, like I said for Windows. In this, so yeah, under the Phones tab, we're going to select Nexus 6 at the moment because that's what they recommend, and it helps us to easily accelerate it using the hardware acceleration. Then we're going to click Next. Then we're going to want to select the operating system we want to run on the device. So Flutter recommends, that we use an x86 or x86_64 image, and I'm just going to go with Pi because that's what they recommended. You can change the AVD name, but the important step here is to change the emulated graphics, performance graphics from automatic to hardware, same exact thing in Windows, because it helps the graphics for faster rendering. So what they mean by that is, got to AVD manager at the bottom, it says create new virtual device, phone, Nexus 6. You're going to keep going. Then you'll get the operating system when you get to system image, and then there's Pi. If it doesn't pop up, I think you can also select like x86 images, and then it would be there. If you want to use a different one, you just download it, say yes to all the requirements, and then you can select it, and then you can keep going. Okay, so you select finish, and then now you have the device manager set up ready to go. So if you want to launch it, you can just select the plate button on the right, and then you should be able to see the device. Then we're going to try to run on the Android virtual device. So to select it, you can say either the iPhone XR or select the Android SDK. Then click to run the sample code. So I said iPhone XR, but we haven't downloaded the iOS emulator yet. So after you download that, then you can access that. So same thing here. You can see it in the console of it running. Same thing, the initializing Gradle as the Windows, and then it should load, and you can see like the Flutter demo homepage on the Android device. So after you select the operating system, this is one of the important parts I said. You can change the name if you want to. It's up to you. And this is the important part. Emulated performance graphics. It was automatic, but you want to change to hardware because it helps with faster rendering. Select finish, and then it would pop up like this. And then you're going to click play because you want to launch the AVD in the emulator. And then it's going to open up like this. So your device would then be on the screen with like all these little tools on the side. Okay, and like I said, you can select here at the top Android SDK built for x86 or the iPhone. Initializing Gradle, that takes some time, but it's just running it. And then it will show up like this because they ran the sample code, and then it showed up like that. So that's the counter app. You keep selecting it, the number increases. Okay, so this is the extra step for Mac. You don't need to do this for Windows. So again, I have a Mac, so like I know that this takes up a lot of storage, especially this portion takes up about like 6 GB, I think. So to download Xcode, you're going to go to the App Store, and it may take a while if you are following me, but I don't think any of you are. Open Xcode by searching for it in the Spotlight, and then agree to all the terms and requirements we need to that is needed for it. So before I get to the next part, so here on the website itself, the Flutter website, you can just go there and go to the Mac App Store, or if you on your Mac itself, you can go to App Store and then download Xcode, and then after you download it, agree to it and everything, it should be there and you should be able to search it up. Sometimes if you can't find it in a search, I know you can also go to Finder and then find it there. So we need to set up the Xcode command line tools. So we're going to open the terminal and copy the line and paste it onto the terminal. Sudo Xcode, select the switch, all this stuff. This is also on the website for installing Xcode. I can show you. Where is that code? There it is. So this little like line right here, sudo Xcode, and you're gonna hit enter in the terminal, I believe, and then because you use the keyword sudo, which means super user do, it means you need admin privileges. Oh my god, privileges. Sorry, excuse me. And that's basically, it's going to ask you for the password that you use to log in into your Mac. So like when your Mac is locked and you want to get inside, just that password. It's going to ask you to do that on terminal. So you can't really see yourself typing it, but you'll know you got it when you see your username again, or else it's going to keep saying like, oh, it's wrong. After you do that, after you put in that little command line and you set it up, you can quit terminal, and then Xcode should be all set up. So basically I downloaded it and then they searched it up, Xcode. They clicked on it, and then it would look like this. So you can also find it here. And then in the terminal, you just type in like the command I told you. So they typed it and then asked for the password. And then if you type the password wrong, it would say, sorry, try again because you can't see it. And then if you type it again and you get it right, then your username will come back up. So now we're going to test Xcode with the iOS simulator. So to test with the iOS simulator, we need to, when you download Xcode, another application gets installed with it, which is the iOS simulator. So look, when I said it to you before, like, oh, if you're trying to like run it after you downloaded the Android emulator and you're like, you saw like that I had the option for iPhone XR and then Android, then the thing is after you download Xcode, the iOS simulator downloads along with it. So you don't really have to do it separately. And then again, you can search it up in the Spotlight and open it up. So this will take time to set up. It's kind of like when you power off your iPhone and then you power it back on and then you have like the Apple logo and then a little bar and it's like says that it's loading. The same exact thing will show. So to show you, I'm gonna go here. So you can type in simulator in this little Spotlight. The little thing will show up. The little bar will be there, same as the loading. After you do that, once you have it open, we can test it with the iOS simulator. You should have your testing app still with you, open on Android. So the Android Studio, so don't really close that. If you want to reopen it in Android Studio, you can just go to File at the top, open the recent, or locate the project that has the folder. But just sort of keep it open, don't really close all that. So to run the iOS simulator, we need to change the device. At the moment, you may have your Android emulator in the dropdown, but now since you downloaded Xcode, you should be able to see the iPhone XR. Then you can click the play button to run it. You should also be able to view the emulator and simulator simultaneously. So to stop the apps from running, you can click the square button next to the Android icon. Basically, I open the simulator app because that's going to bring up the little iPhone simulator, iOS simulator, and then you still have your testing app open in Android Studio. Before we had like the Android SDK, now you have the iPhone XR option too. So if you selected that, and then you can run it by pressing the little play button right there next to main.dart. And then if you wanted to stop from running, you can stop the processes right here by selecting the red button. So now we're going to go ahead and configure Android Studio. So we're going to start up Android Studio where you see like the welcome screen. So I guess like now after you've downloaded everything, you can play around with it if you want, then you can go ahead and close it. When we configure Android Studio, you open it up like fresh, and then you see the welcome screen, and then you're going to create a new Flutter project. And then this is the same process as before. You create the Flutter project, select the Flutter application, leave the default project name, which would be Flutter_app as a demo, but you could rename it. So obviously it's up to you what you want to name your Flutter app, project. And then project location, like I said, it's kind of like where you want it to be saved. So what I mean by that is when you open up Android Studio, right, it looks like this. You start a new Flutter project, click application, project name, just a demo, Flutter_app, SDK path is where your Flutter project is, where you want it to be located. Again, it doesn't show up. You can click the 3 buttons to locate. And then project location, this is kind of default. So we're going to go ahead and just keep that. Don't really need to change the description. Again, it's up to you. You're going to click next. This page comes up again, setting the package name with the company domain. Like I said before, if you have a company or website, you can go ahead and use that. So one of the tutorials I was watching, they have a company called appbrewery.co. That's what they used. But if you don't really have anything like that, you could use your name. This is, again, just like a unique name to identify your app like it belongs to you when in the App Store. You could just put your name and put .com. And then unless someone has the same name and the same app name as you, that would be an issue. But, you know, it's unlikely. So you could also just like play around with that. We're not really going to change like the platform channel language because we're not really using Kotlin or Swift. So again, like I just sort of said, for example, Jane Doe. Jane Doe obviously is pretty popular, but you can use your own name. And yeah, like I said, you want the package name to uniquely identify your app in the App Store. So something applicable to that. You click finish. You're not really going to mess with any of the other stuff. First, you configure in the appearance of Android Studio. So this is sort of just like you can choose to do this, not necessary at all. This is just some advice I got, and I know some people prefer to do it this way, so I'm just going to show you. If you want to like, if you really like how like the background's like white and you like it's too bright or something, and you like it with a darker screen, if you know, again with Macs, like iPhones and stuff, you can do the same thing with like on iMessage. So you just go to preferences, file preferences, or if you're in Windows, it would be file and then settings. Settings and preferences means the same exact thing. And then this little screen will pop up with preferences, settings, whatever. And then appearance and behavior show up. You click on appearance and then go to theme, and it says light, and then you could change it to dark. And then you will have like the little dark screen. If you want to change the font size, like sometimes if like you need the code to be bigger, you can change the font size, and then you can see the sample right here. So same as that's what basically I explained here. You can select from the drop down and change the color from light to dark. I know they have something called Darkula, which is the same thing as dark. And the changes will apply after you select apply. So make sure you do that, and then you press apply, or else it's gonna like look the same. And then same thing to change the font size. You would select editor on the left and then select the font from the drop down list to adjust the text size. So on the side right here, I selected editor right there, editor, and then the little drop down font. And they have other stuff here too, like color scheme, code style, whichever. It's kind of like something that it's up to your preference, like what you want your Android Studio to look like. So for the behavior of Android Studio, we're going to open up preferences pane as we said before, the little like main page with all the preferences. We're going to select languages and framework and then expand that. So there should be a setting for the Dart and Flutter for those plugins, and we're going to select Flutter. After you select Flutter, we're going to go to app execution and make sure we select perform hot reload on save. If you were here before, I said that hot reload was basically like a refresh button. So once you make a change to your app, it shows up on the emulator, simulator device, whichever, right away, rather than taking a while. And under general, we're going to format code on save and select OK. So basically what we're doing here is to make sure that every time we hit save, it would reload and reformat the app. So it does it right away, like immediately. So show you. So when I said like the preferences pane, this is what they mean by preferences pane. So like little like main screen. So they went to languages and frameworks and clicked on Flutter. And then they clicked format code on save and then perform hot reload on save under app execution and general. Okay. So after you do that, for the key mapping of Android Studio, this is basically like creating shortcuts on your keyboard. A lot of you probably already know how to do this. I'm going to show you anyways. Again, these are just personal preferences. You don't have to do this. But if you're like, rather than going to like file and then searching, you can sort of just like use a keyboard shortcut. If you don't really know what I'm talking about, then like, for example, if you have a Mac, when I code on VS Code, instead of going to like file and hitting save every time, I can just do Command S and then it saves the code right then. So basically, to do any keyboard shortcuts, they went to key map, and then you can just search here. So there's some steps for that if you want to do that. So for example, if you wanted to create a new Flutter project, and you'd have to go to the file, click new Flutter project. But instead of doing that, we can just create a shortcut for it. So in Android Studio at the top left, and you go to preferences, go to key map, and then we're going to change the key bindings. So the simplest way to do this is to search. You can search where the search bar is, and to make a shortcut for a new Flutter project, search those exact words in the search. So then I'll show you like a little screenshot. So basically, you get some options like main menu, file, new Flutter project. Like that's what you would typically do. So what I mean is I went to key map, right? And then I got the little like search here, and I searched up new Flutter project, and then some options came, and it said main menu, file, new Flutter project. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I would usually do. You're going to right click here and add a keyboard shortcut. After you do that, you would type in the command you want to do. So let's say you're like, this is the same for Windows too, by the way. Let's say I wanted to do Command F or Control F, means the same thing. I could do that. And then the thing is, oh, I went too far. So you could do Command F, and but the thing is, Command F and Control F is kind of already like predefined, which is they use that to find something. So you don't want to override it unless you're purposely trying to. So you could try something else like Command Shift F, and it would tell you if the shortcut's already there. So after you create your specified or preferred command, you can select OK. Then when you come back to the main page of key map and preferences, click Apply and then OK, and then test out your shortcut. So after you do that, you click OK, right? And then you click Apply and then OK again, and then you can like test it out. So one more time. You search up what you want, right click, add keyboard shortcut, put your little command here. It would say if it's like not taken already and it's good to go. Click OK, click Apply, and then click OK again. And then you should be able to test it out. So that was basically like configuring Android Studio. I'm gonna just also give you like a brief Android Studio tour / overview. So basically, like Android Studio is like your office. Like that's where you're developing your Flutter apps. It's your IDE. So at the top left, there should be a navigation bar showing you the location of the current file relative to your project. I could probably show you that right now. And main.dart file is the starting point for all Flutter apps. Like that's like the main area. So to locate, remember Flutter_app was created in Android Studio project. That was like where we located it. So if you click the Flutter app inside Android Studio project folder and then select the lib folder, you should be able to see your main.dart file. So this would be like the route to reach the current project file. So you have like in Android Studio projects, you have your Flutter_app. If you click on it, you have lib, and then you have your main.dart file. Sorry. And so there's a project pane on the far left. It's horizontal and it says project. So there should be a folder here for Android apps and iOS apps, and expanding gives you familiarity with those. So you can focus on the lib folder since that's where you'll be writing your Dart code. So like on the far left, that's your project pane. And then you can expand it, but like we're gonna focus on lib. I mean, you can also expand like iOS and Android and see whatever is there. It's usually pertaining to like whatever those like properties are. And so, so for instance, inside the project navigator, if you wanted to open a file for inspection, like you just want to like see what's inside of it, we're gonna look at pubspec.yaml. It's an important file because it helps to configure Flutter apps and third-party libraries, packages, etc. I don't know why there. There we go. Sorry about that. And yeah, so if you wanted to, let's say it's under project lib pubspec. If you double clicked on it, it would open up, and this helps to configure your Flutter apps. So that's an important file that should automatically be there. Editor pane. This is where you'll be writing most of your code. Editor pane is like the main pane, like, you know, where you usually write code. There are swatches of color on the side margin to help you identify the color that you used in the specific part. There's also buttons to collapse sections of code, and then you can click the 3 dots to expand it again. So what I mean by that is, let's take a look here. So this is your editor pane, like the main area where you write code, right? So you have those like colored swatch right here, and it's blue. So it's saying like, oh, like you have your main app, you have the title Flutter demo, and then a theme, you created a theme and you want the theme background color to be blue from the color class. So it's saying this is the color blue that I used. So just like a little tip. Let's say that you finish writing a section of code and you're like, oh, like I don't really, like it would be nice to minimize it so I can focus on other sections. You can just click a little box next to it and it should collapse the whole thing. And it would look like this. You just see like the function line. If you wanted to expand it, you could either click on the 3 dots or you can click on the little like box that you click to collapse it originally to expand it again. So now another thing, Dart analysis, it comes from the Dart plugin. So this points out parts of the code that is wrong, any warnings. So sometimes when you run code on like VS Code and then after you run it, it's like, oh, you know, like missing something here, or like basically, or actually, sorry, in VS Code, let's say you type something and then it's like a little red line and stuff. It's kind of like that, except there's like a portion, like kind of, it's like next to the console or tab of the console where it tells you, oh, like there's some, like in this part, there's an error. And if you are like in somewhere else on your code and you're like, I don't know where like this error is, you can double click on it in the Dart analysis and then it will take you there. So let me show you. Okay. So right here at the bottom is your Dart analysis. There's another tab there. You can click for console. So Dart analysis and console next to each other. And it said, error expected to find comma. So it's saying that right here before theme, it was like there needs to be a comma here. So let's say you added a comma before theme, the error would go away. But like that's not typically where the formatting would be fine. So if you wanted to reformat it, you can just right click and then click on reformat code with Dart FMT. So this is like, it automatically comes with it when you install everything. And then it would put the comma back where it should be, like reformat the code, which would be like right there next to Flutter demo. Flutter outline is the next thing I wanted to look at. It's on the far right side and it says Flutter outline. Basically, it builds up the tree structure for the entire code base. There are tree structure for widgets, and it's useful when you have a long line of code and you wanted to locate a specific thing. So Flutter outline, it's on the far right. Right there, like Flutter outline, got a little cut right there, and you can see it. It's kind of like, you can click on and expand. So let's say here they clicked on scaffold, which is right here, and then it has app bar, the app bar widget, the text widget, the center widget, column widget, and you can like click here And it's like that widget tree. So it kind of like walks you through like what's contained within that widget. Because since it's like a widget tree, every widget has its own subtree. So this is really useful when you're trying to like locate something or see what it's like trying to do. Flutter Inspector is right next to it. It's in order to see anything in the Inspector app, you have to make sure you're running like the device, emulator, or simulator. So make sure you have that running. By the way, if you get a little pop-up saying an IDE error occurred, that's nothing that you did wrong, just to see if the plugins are working in the back. So the Flutter Inspector is very useful for debugging and checking what's going on with the app. So you want to give specific details for every line of code. It tells you what properties to inspect and what the app looks like, why it looks the way it does. So if you select the little circle icon in Flutter Inspector on top of widgets, it would give you the option to select something on the device, emulator, or simulator. So after selecting the X and then selecting something on the device, it would highlight the part of the code that is creating the specific item that you selected. Another button is the light blue, which looks like arrows in 4 directions. Clicking on this will show you the layout of your app and the positioning. So very quickly, so this is the Flutter Inspector, and you can see like you can like click. It has like the iPhone running. So if you click on App Bar and the text, it shows you like it highlights where it is, like what's going on there, and it also shows up on here. And then clicking on the little like box right there, it shows you the layout. Like, oh, like this is how they positioned everything. Lastly, the console at the bottom of the screen on the left, you can see between console, Dart analysis, terminal, etc. So when there's something wrong in the app, when you run it, you get messages from the device saying what's wrong is displayed there. This is a little different than Dart analysis because Dart analysis helps you when you're writing the code. It's like syntax errors, but the console tells you when there's something wrong. So the console's right there, telling you that it's running. So that is basically setting up. I'm going to give you a very quick tutorial on Hello World, and just to like show you how to like what it would look like. So for the Hello World tutorial, you're going to open up Android Studio. You're going to do everything you did before, where you select, create a new Flutter app, create the application, create a project name. It doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. Just do like the underscores in between it. If you have a company domain and website, you can use that, or you can use your name and put .com. I explained this before. If you don't have a company website, that's what I just said. Under generate sample content, under sample application, you're going to select general sample content, and then to get some starting code with the wizard, and then to see what we can do with Flutter. So in the dropdown, we're going to select scaffold. So a scaffold is basically a class in Flutter, and it gives a lot of widgets, provides a framework, and gives a basic design layout for the app. So we're going to keep everything else the same. You're not using Kotlin or Swift. Like I said before, all of that part is the same. Again, there may be some starting code with the Flutter team, a counter app, and you can run it if you want by pressing the play button. It's up to you. And, oh, sorry. I want you to go ahead and delete all of that code though, like the pre-set up code that Flutter gave you, except 2 lines, which is to import the package and the main function. You would have void main, the little like equal to, and then the little bracket, run app, and then my app. My app belonged to the previous code, so you can remove my app. And then you can also replace the equal to bracket with curly braces. They mean the same exact thing. They're going to do it. It's the same thing, but it just makes it easier with curly braces. And I think we're also more familiar with that. So this is something that I kind of wanted to look at before I show you the sample code. Basically, you have a material app widget. So material app is basically a predefined class in Flutter, and it's like a main core component. and it can access all components and widgets by the Flutter SDK. So it's like the starting point and tells Flutter you are going to use the material components and follow the material design of your app. Typically, if you didn't include center basically like centers all like whatever you're going to put next. So if I remove center from here, then it's just like material app widget to like the text widget. Then your text would be in like the left corner. So if you exclude this, your text would be up there. But if you want it to be centered, then you would have to add this widget. And like I said, this is like a widget tree. So it's like this is the root node or like the parent node, and then these are the children, not child. So that's just something to keep in mind to show you like how it's working. So these, like the import package is what I want you to keep, and then the void main. So this is how it may look initially after you're like deleting everything. So I'm going to sort of like tell you what each line does. Import basically imports all the libraries provided by the Flutter SDK. We can use all the Flutter widgets to like implement like the design that's like from like all the packages and materials in there. Main is the same main as anything else, executes the statements, and then it's like the starting point for the app. Run app is basically going to take the widget that's in there. So right now, material app is like the argument widget, and it the given widget is like the root widget, like I said, like the parent widget, and all the others are child. So it's going to run everything. Material app, like I said, is like a predefined class. It's a core component and can access all the components for the widgets. And it tells Flutter you are going to use the material components and follow the material design. So that's like the main widget. Within that, you have home. Home is basically like a default route of the app, which means like the widget in it is displayed when the app starts. So center is like what's going to display, and that's a widget, and then within that it's like a child widget, which is text, and you're going to say hello world with single quotes, and then you're going to close it off. Obviously this looks a little difficult to read, so I recommend you put like commas here after every parentheses except the last one, obviously, and then it would you can right click and put reformat code with $fmt, and then it would reformat it, and it would look like this. So this is obviously easier to read, and you can also remove like that equal to bracket and put parentheses instead. So it's also easier for you to read. So yeah, so it runs the app, and the material app is with like, you know, all the material components. You have home, which is like the default route, which is when like the app starts. It's going to read what the app starts. So center, it's like the center widget. Everything after this will be in the middle. Child, child text is like the child of center. So then it's going to print hello world in the center. So this is like another sample one that I wanted you to look at from Geeks for Geeks. And that's the same thing, just like a little bit more complex, I guess. They also run the app, material app, and then they added something called a title. This is like a property or like a variable, and called it Geeks for Geeks. And then they added a theme, and then the theme data is like something that's a built-in widget. Inside this widget, you have to write like different properties related to it. So then the primary switch was like a property, swatch, not switch. It's a property. So colors is a class, and then the dot green, which is what gives them the title. And then remember home is where like the code like starts. Run app is like running it. So in home they have a scaffold. The difference between like material app and scaffold's like under material apps. It gives like basic functionality like app bar, floating action button, etc. So they have an app bar, and then they added a title text saying Geeks for Geeks. So it like this is a starting point, and then this runs it, and then this is what it ended up looking like. So that's like this is just like a basic to see like not really hello, like I showed you hello world. It's like just a different concept. So obviously instead of Geeks for Geeks, you're going to put hello world if that's what you're trying to test. And that's all I have. Is there any questions? If not, you can definitely reach out to me after. You can also follow the instructions on the Flutter website with the link that was in the chat or that's in this presentation, which you should have access to after, or this recording. And just follow the steps to set it up, and you should be able to start making your Flutter apps. Just make sure you have a lot of storage when you start, and be sure to check out another workshop we have next week where we start building an app from Flutter. So today was set up, next week you're going to start building.